Is this the right layout? Change layout. Spotlight. Right. Okay. All right, so let's get started and let's turn to page 66. Okay, page 66. All right, so yesterday we mentioned this part already. Says although I knew it was wrong, I say yes at a brief pause because Ryan is such a good friend. So we know we can use such and you put a noun behind, and then use so, an adjective and adverb, right? And for the word although, you can also use a word like despite and in spite of. But here you have to pay attention. You want to make a sentence like this. You have to make sure the subject, the two subjects or the two sentences are the same. So for this one, it says, although I knew it was wrong. So the subject is I. And the second one, I said yes. So the subject is I as well. So in this case, if you have the two same subjects, you can make this one into like despite knowing it was wrong. Or you can also say in spite of knowing it was wrong. All right? So let's move forward. So here it says, Ryan got such a poor grade on his science report that he would fail the course. So here, please underline phrase here, the grade on something, okay, grade on. So the poor grade on his science report that he will fail the course. Worried about it, he asked for mine to copy. So here, worried, originally it is because he was worried about it, all right? And then because we had the same subject, right? He and he. And then we can omit the word because here. So that's why I made this one into like worried. You can also say being worried about, but mostly we don't use the word being here. So you simply say worried about it. He asked for mine to copy. So mine, yesterday I also asked the question, what does the mine, this word here refer to? My here means what? My what? My here is, yeah, his science report, right? So this report is a big part of our assessment this term. So term also means like semester. So you can also use a word like this is going to be a big part of our assessment in this term or in this semester. So you can also write down the word here, semester. All right, so the word semester. So if the school discovers our scheme, we could both pay a heavy penalty for cheating. So here you can also underline phrase a penalty for something. So there will be a kind of punishment or kind of penalty for cheating. So when I voiced my concern, so here we use voice as a verb, which means when I speak out or when I say it. Okay, so voice here is used as a verb. So when I speak out my concern or when I say my concerns, Ryan sounded casual and his words disappointed me. So here you can also underline phrases sounded casual. So for some of this kind of verb, you can just put an adjective behind. For example, we have says like sound, right? And also like it looks good. Or like it smells good. Or like it feels good. So there'll be these kind of verbs. Okay, we are talking about the feelings using these kind of verbs, and then you can just put an adjective behind. And if you want to put a noun behind, you have to say like something. So for example, it sounded like a big plan, or you can say it sounded like a easy work. For example, sound like something. So he even implied that my refusal will have profound consequences, which is failing science would stir his parents' anger. So here you can underline phrase here, stir one's anger. So when you stir one's anger, which means what? You make someone very angry. Okay, stir one's anger. So you can underline phrase here, stir one's anger, which means you try to make someone very angry. And he might have to transfer to a different school in obedience to them. So here, please underline phrase here, in obedience to. Okay, in obedience to. So when you want to say I kind of obey someone's order, you can also use a phrase like in obedience to. You can also use be obedient to using the adjective. Be obedient to something. For example, you can say, we should be obedient to rules, which means we should follow the rules, or we should obey the rules. So you can say, we should obey the rules, or we should be obedient to the rules. Okay. So you can also say we should be in obedience to the rules, all right, using the phrase here. So be obedient to, which simply means that obey or you try to follow something. So overall, he says like this kind of failing science would stir his parents' anger, and he might have to transfer to a different school, which means he had to change to another school in obedience to them. So here he said he would become lonely in a new school, and that he would finally get seriously depressed. So how many things did he say? How many? 1, 2, or 3, or 4? He said he would become lonely in a new school and that he would finally get seriously depressed. So how many statements did he say? It should be 1 or 2. 2, right? So the very first thing will be he will become lonely in a new school. So there will be 1, right? So he will become lonely in a new school. That will be the first thing. And the second thing will be he would finally get seriously depressed. So that will be the second thing here. All right. So originally you can say the sentence will be like, he says that. Okay. So you can also put the word that here as well. Okay. So he said that he would become lonely in a new school and that he would finally get seriously depressed. So here he mentioned 2 things. The first thing will be he will become lonely in a new school, and the second thing will be he will finally get seriously depressed. Besides, which means that what's more or in addition. So you can also write down some other words here. So for the word besides, you can also say like what's more. Or in addition. All right, so he even confronted me with a choice of lending my report or ranking our friendship. All right, so here you can also underline phrase here, confront someone with something. All right, so he even forced me to face the conflicts. He even kind of asked me to face the conflicts. So here we have 2 conflicts, right? we have two situations for the person to choose. What are the two situations being chosen here? What are the choices we have here? The first choice will be lending my report, right? So they might be the very first choice. So lending my report, there'll be a choice. And what might be the second choice? It should be, so if you don't lend your report, then what happened? What happened? What will happen? There will be what? Our friendship will be destroyed, all right? So here we have two choices, like either or, right? So the very first choice will be you can lend me your report. Okay, that will be the first thing. Or you can destroy or you can damage our friendship. So we know he was forced to make a choice between these two. Whether you want to lend me your report or you will destroy our friendship. So that's why in the end it say, finally, I couldn't help but. So we can learn phrase here, can't help but. Okay, can't help but. So if you say can't help but, in this case, you put a root verb behind. Okay, can't help do something. All right, can't help but. And if you don't have the word but here, then you can say can't help doing something. All right. So you can also say I couldn't help giving into pressure. Or you can just say I couldn't help but give into pressure. Okay, couldn't help but, or couldn't help doing something. There are another two ways for you to say so. You can also say have no choice but to do something. Or you can say have no alternative but to do something. So in other words, you can say I had no choice but to give into pressure. Or you can say, I have no alternative but to give into pressure. All right? So you can use the word like can't help but do something, or can't help doing something, or have no choice but to do something, or have no alternative but to do something. All right? So there'll be some other way for you to say something like this. And another key phrase you have to underline here will be give into. Okay, give into. So when you give into something, as we mentioned before, which means you surrender to something. Okay, so you can write down the words here, give into or surrender to something. You can also use another two verb like yield to something, or submit to something. So you can say, I give into pressure. I surrender to pressure. I yield to pressure. Or I submit to pressure. All right. So you can use give into, yield to, submit to, or surrender to. Okay, so they all share the similar meanings. So I give into that, I yield to that, I submit to that, or I surrender to that. So, if you were the writer, which choice would you make? Would you lend your report, or you would like to destroy your friendship? Maybe you can do a quick vote. So if you will lend your report, please raise your hand. I'll see someone who is raising hand. No one. And you will choose to destroy your friendship. Raise your hand. Oh, BC, well free. Okay, so what might be one more have raised hand. All right. So you will choose to destroy your friendship instead of doing something not right or something kind of just like cheating. All right. So Binxi, you can put your hand down now. Binxi, hey, how come your hand is still raised? Binxi.
老师，我按了，可是我不知道为什么他这边显示我是没有举手状态。
Oh, delay. Anyway, 3 second delay. Alright. Then we can move forward. So let's move on to the second paragraph here. So let's see another letter we have here. Alright. So next one, Thursday, October 21st. So you have to pay attention when you are talking about the dates. You don't say 21, you have to say 21st, 22nd, 23rd, or 24th, and 25th, for example, okay? So 21st, 22nd, for instance. And then I'm relieved that I decided to consult my cousin Lisa about Ryan's request. So you can underline phrase here, consult someone about something. So you consult someone about something. So she recommended a book called Emotional Blackmail. So you can also underline the phrase here, called. Okay, called. So called originally, which is called emotional blackmail. Okay, which is called emotional blackmail. And we can just omit which is here. So when the people in your life use fear, obligation, and guilt to manipulate you, so that's why we call it kind of emotional blackmail here. So she even lent me a copy. And then we know the author clearly outlines the way that someone uses fear, obligation, and guilt to influence other people without caring about them or their needs. Okay, so here you can pay attention to the phrase here, without. Okay, so without doing something, which means not doing something. So that will be a good phrase for you to use when you are going to write your article, without doing something. Which means like if you don't care about them or you don't care about their needs, okay, without doing something. So you can put a noun or put VIH form behind. So as we know, there are 4 main types of emotional blackmailers or emotional blackmails, which are punishers, self-punishers, sufferers, and also tantalizers. So we have 4 types of emotional blackmail. All right? And then we can move forward to page 68. So on page 68 here it says, when I read the chapters in the book, I noticed Ryan was firstly a self-punisher who had tried to make me feel guilty by talking about his feelings or depression. So we know he is going to be a self-punisher. And what kind of self-punisher? So here use a clause to describe. The punisher who had tried to make feel guilty by talking about his possible feelings of depression due to a lonely life in a new school. So it's a long clause to describe the person. So this kind of self-punisher had tried to make me feel guilty. So here you can underline the phrase here, make someone do something, all right? So make someone feel guilty. So you can put a root verb here, all right? You can also put a passive voice behind. Or here you can just simply say, make me guilty. And then you just use an adjective behind, okay, an adjective. So make me guilty or make me feel guilty. You can also use a noun. For example, you can just say, had tried to make me a guilty person. Okay, try to make me a guilty person. So for the word make someone or make something, you can put a root verb behind, or a passive voice, or an adjective, or a noun. All right. So by talking about his possible feelings or depression, so by here, please underline the words here. By here means by means of. So means here means the way of doing something. So you can also say in a way of doing something. Okay, in a way of doing something by using certain kind of a way. So by here means that using certain kind of way of, by talking, which means by means of talking or in a way of talking. So this person had tried to make me feel guilty by means of talking about his possible feelings of depression. And why? Due to. So you can add a phrase here, due to. Okay, due to, which means what? This kind of depression was caused by a lonely life in a new school. All right. So besides using the word due to, you can also use the word, this one's the easiest one, which is because of. You can also say owing to, and you can also use thanks to. But usually when we use thanks to, usually there'll be something good. And in this case, we use thanks to. But in this case, I think a lonely life here probably will be something bad. So probably you can use the words like owing to or because of. So by talking about his possible feelings of depression because of a lonely life in a new school, or owing to a lonely life in a new school. So he was likewise a punisher. So when I was caught in a dilemma of whether to share my report, so you can phrase it in the dilemma of something. So we know dilemma, when you see the word di, which means two, something being divided into two parts. So the dilemma here we are talking about will be the two choices you are going to make. The very first one, you lend him or lend her your report. The second one, you destroy your friendship. So whether to share my report, he was feeling my fears and threatening not to be my friend as a punishment. So you can phrase it, threaten to, and threaten to do something. And if you are not going to do that, you say threaten not to do something. All right, to control me or to manipulate me. So here it says, not once did Ryan think about the consequences that could stain my reputation. Again, here you see the word not here in the beginning, right? So that's why you have to change the sentence a little bit. Originally, we say, Ryan did not once think. Okay, that will be the original sentence. Or you can also say, Ryan never thought that. In this case, you are going to make the word not to the front. Then you are going to change the sentence. For example, if you still remember in the past, we learned, never will I go there, or seldom did I wake up that early, or hardly did I see the place. All right, so you have to change the sequence a little bit. So we move the word not to the front. Sorry, not once together. Okay, not once together. You move this one to the front, and then we put the auxiliary verb here. All right, so there'll be not once did Ryan think about the consequences that could stain my reputation. You can also say never did Ryan think about. So probably you can write down here. If you not once, which means never, right? So you can say never did Ryan, and we had did here, so you just put the word think here, right? So you can also make this one in this way. So not once, as we know, which means never. So you can also say never did Ryan think. about the consequences that could stain my reputation. So in the end, it said, and Lisa's guidance and perspective made me very cautious about Ryan's request. So again, the word made. So you make someone, then you can put an adjective behind, right? So made me very cautious about Ryan's request. All right, then let's move forward. So here it says, I asked Lisa why she had read such a book. So here we use had read. So I asked Lisa why she had read such a book. So can you tell me which one happened first? It should be 1 or 2. The verb here, which one happened first? It should be I asked Lisa or she had read such a book. Which one happened first? 1 or 2? Binxi, which one? She had read such a book. Or I asked Lisa, which one happened first?
他先读吧。
Yeah. So that's why we use she had read, right? So we use this kind of had PP to say something that happened earlier, all right? Okay, so there will be the phrase here you should still remember. Okay, we use this form to say something that happened earlier, right? So had read such a book. So it turned out, so you can another phrase that turned out. So which means the result becomes something. So it turned out her colleague Jessica had been emotionally blackmailing her for many years. And as we know, Jessica often got headaches, and at the time she said her headaches would go away if Lisa lent her a hand. So you can also online phrase here, lend someone a hand, which means you give someone a hand, which means you try to help someone. Okay, so lend someone a hand. You can also use a word like give. Give someone a hand. Okay, give someone a hand, which means you try to help someone. Okay. And another phrase we're going to underline here will be here. It says, whether Lisa was willing to help Jessica or not. So lend a hand, which means like help, right? And then whether or not. So we can have phrase here, whether or not. You can also say whether or not Lisa was willing to help Jessica. Or you can also put or not in the end. But you can also say whether or not. So whether or not Lisa was willing to help Jessica. And here, please underline phrase here, be willing to, okay, be willing to do something. So here it says, all she felt she could do was to take on part of Jessica's work. So all she felt she could do. For this part, all she felt she could do. This part will be the subject. And was here is the verb. And all here originally, we use the word all to mean something, all the things. So originally it should be that here. So all that someone can do, all that someone should do, all that someone must do. In this case, all she felt she could do. Okay, all she felt she could do. So all that she felt she could do. Okay, all that she felt she could do. So basically, originally we should have a that here. Okay, to make this one like a clause to describe what those things are. Okay, so all that she felt she could do was what? Was to take on part of Jessica's work. Hi, Brian. So you come here. So you live nearby. All right. So to take part of Jessica's work. All right. So was to take on. So here, please pay attention to this one. For this kind of sentence, sometimes they will omit the word to here. Okay, because they are quite short, you must do that. So you just like an imperative sentence. So mostly you have to put a root verbs here behind. Okay, so that's why we have a sentence pattern here. All that someone can do or should do or must do is to do what? Okay, it should be here. I probably can use another color to underline. So all that someone should or must to do is what? And mostly we'll omit the word to here. So that's why always we put a root verb behind. Okay. So all someone can do is to do what? And for the word to, usually we'll omit this one. So that's why we'll put a root verb behind. Right? So we have to pay attention to this one. So we can just simply say all she could do was take on part of Jessica's work. Right? All she felt she could do was take on part of Jessica's work. Okay, take on part of Jessica's work. So bye-bye, Brian. So this noticeably slowed down the pace of Lisa's own work. So noticeably, here you can underline phrase here, noticeably, which means that obviously or apparently. I miss one mark here. Oh, yo. Okay. So obviously or apparently. So this noticeably slowed down the pace. We can say this obviously slowed down the pace, or this apparently slowed down the pace of Lisa's own work. So that's why we know because she felt overwhelmed. Okay, we can omit the word because. I should use another color. Okay. So we omit a word like because, right? And then we had the same subject, she and Lisa. And then that's why I made this one fell into feeling. So feeling overwhelmed. Okay, feeling overwhelmed. So originally we say because she felt overwhelmed, Lisa eventually spoke to Jessica. So at first, Jessica didn't think that she had been manipulating. But after reading the book, Jessica found she had been a sufferer. And then her sincere apology to Lisa made their working relationship much stronger. So we can like phrase it apology to someone. And then usually we use for something. Okay, apology to someone for something. Probably I can write this down here. Apology to someone for something. And usually we use the word make, like make an apology to someone for something. Oh, the bell rings. And then here it says, Lisa made the working relationship much stronger. So again, if you still remember the word make, okay, we have been repeating this one for many times. Make, and you put an object behind, and then you can just simply put an adjective. So which made their working relationship much stronger. Okay. And then Lisa said, it was critical that I assert myself and express my thoughts. Okay, this is the last sentence pattern here. It says, it is critical that someone should do something. So if you still remember, there are some of the verb you can use, right? So someone suggests that someone should do something, or someone demand that someone should do something. So behind the sentence behind will be like an imperative sentence. You just set the order to ask someone to do something. And these adjectives are quite the same, which means you ask those people to do something for sure, just like you are giving an order. So there'll be, it is critical that someone should do something. And mostly we'll omit the word should, okay? So we can say it is critical that someone should do something. It is important that someone should do something. It is essential that someone should do something. Or we can also use a word like urgent, imperative, necessary, or vital. So these adjectives are strong adjectives that you can use to give your order or to give your demand that you ask someone to do something, or you say that someone should do something for sure. All right, so I think I will start here. We'll try to finish the last paragraph next Wednesday. All right, so see you next Wednesday, and hopefully you are still alive when you come back. Right.
所以先下课了吧？
Yeah,
拜拜。
广播请2.1班黄宪明同学，请到学务处。再报告一下，请2.1班黄宪明。